Welcome everybody. We are super excited yet again. Oh my God, I'm out of breath. I have to get me workout in, you know what I mean? It's only fair, isn't it? Just a couple of minutes, right? And breathe. And breathe. Right, okay. So we've got a great lineup tonight. Obviously, we've got our Lee Gilder on, our lawyer. So if you've got any questions, use and abuse. Come on, have I not taught you anything over the last 20 years? And then we've got our Wayne Gray, finance expert. Again, use and abuse. I bloody well love it. So we've got great speakers on tonight. So we've got Rob Harrison, all things surveys, which we're trying to add value by getting you to look through stuff. I had auctions last month that went really, really well. So getting you to look at surveys and how to know when to walk away from a deal, how to negotiate. But anyway, Rob's going to go through all of that. And then we've got Lady V, who keeps us very safe. I was going to say out of prison there, but I don't know whether that's going to be well.
That's Lee.
On compliance regulations, everything lettings management. Victoria's had her own business doing lettings, very, very successful, and sales. So yes, I think we're gonna find out more about the renters reform out of Victoria.
Well, yeah, not that there's much being announced today yet, but we'll find out tomorrow. I'll do my best and I'll answer any questions.
Fantastic. So Lady V to your friends. Do you think these should be allowed to call you Lady V or not?
That's fine, but I've been called worse, Debbie. It's fine.
Join the club, love. Join the club. Right. So why do we get surveys? Does anybody get surveys on properties when they're buying? I hope so. I really hope so. Yeah. So I think back in the day it was like, oh my God, it's £200. It's a lot of money. But yeah, we really need to be getting those surveys done. So talking from an investor's point of view, which also Rob Harrison is an investor and Shirley, is there's three types of surveys which we actually look at. So you've got your basic one, which is the one that we get. Then you've got your somebody's talking. I'm going to have to mute you. Oh, I got the right one, so that's fine. Muted the right person there. So then we've got home buyers. So when I think of a home buyers survey, I think that's the one that the mortgage companies get. So I think if it's good enough for them to then lend on the property, then it's good enough for me as an investor to see what's on there, because it's usually more detailed than the basics. But then you've got the next survey up, which is more structural defects. So they all cost more money, but I usually just go for the home buyers. I mean, to be honest, before that, I would get Rob in to have a look around. He saves us so much money, £5,000 on the roof and all sorts. But he's semi-retiring, unfortunately. So we can't ring him every 5 minutes going, Rob, can you lift to this property for me? So he's semi-retired, so that means he's still sort of around. Is that right, Rob?
That's right, yeah.
Right. So what we'll do is, I've got a few announcements to make, but you know what it is? Let's get straight into it. Because these are something that you can actually use as negotiation tools as well if someone comes up on the survey. But don't forget, you have to put that right as well. So we can negotiate, and I think a lot of first-time buyers get a little bit scared off with surveys if it's got like damp or it's got different things, but not always is it as bad as what we think, is it, Rob, on these surveys? Sometimes they're just covering the backside a little bit, so they don't get sued, to make sure we do extra sort of surveys on damp and dry rot and all different things that can put in there. So Rob, shall we share your screen and then you can get cracking? Hello everybody, by the way. Give us a wave.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just getting this sharing the screen, getting this sorted out. Just give us 1 minute here.
Right. Now, what's the better? Our tech goes right tonight. One of us bound to mess up. One of us bound to mess up. So I can just see Shirley at the background there, a little head popping up. Hi, Shirley.
As you gather, my forte isn't IT.
No, I think you're either an IT person or you're not. I bet you like 90% of people on here are not IT.
Just click on
Right.
You know, I think it's a different skill set, isn't it?
I think I'm here anyway now. Can you see me and me jigsaw house?
No.
No.
Oh, everybody kind of wondered I'm
Yeah.
on the wrong page. Well, if everybody else can, that's fine. Then it's just me that can't.
Can everybody else see? I can't see anybody?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Wayne. Yeah, I've got you. Okay. I'll start then. So good evening, everybody. Debbie has kindly thrown a report, a structural appraisal of a house at me, and asked me to go through it and talk about the various defects that are listed on this report. But as Debbie was just saying there, when buying a house, there's a few types of surveys available. Just say Debbie's just mentioned them anyway. But one type I would like to talk. One type at one end of the scale is a survey carried out on behalf of the lender, if you like, although you still pay for it, and it isn't very in depth at all. It's more of a valuation survey, and basically, all the lender wants to know is if you stop paying your mortgage and they need to repossess, is your house worth enough for them to get their money back if they need to sell it? They might pick up on a few things like anything obvious, like obvious damp, problems with the roof or wall tie failure. And in most cases, they may retain some of the money they're lending to you until the works have been completed. However, in some cases, the valuer won't even visit the property. If it's a fairly recently built house, perhaps in the last 20, 30, 40 years, and that type of house in that particular area rarely has any problems, they might just go off a desktop valuation. But in these situations, if there are any defects, they won't be detected, obviously. And as I say, these surveys are really there to protect them and not you. But at the other end of the scale, as Debbie mentioned there's a survey which is instigated by yourself when you hire a RICS type chartered surveyor to do a detailed inspection and provide you with a written report along with recommendations of any works required. And they're on a sliding scale in order of priority from what's essential or dangerous to what might need doing in a number of years in the future. And these faults are either shown as a red dot or sometimes a number 1 on the report. And that means for requiring immediate attention. An amber or an orange dot or a number 2, that's for works that should be done but aren't dangerous. And a green dot or a number 3 are for works that would be desirable, if you like, and should be looked at sometime in the future. Now, these surveys are fairly expensive. Perhaps, I don't know what they are at the moment, but it could be £600 or £700. But they give you some peace of mind.
You can sign for me. I don't have time now. I have to go away.
I don't know who that is. I'm just
I know, but I can't sign yet now.
Is that Norma? No. Who's that talking? Hello?
I'll drop her in it. It's Sonia.
Property. I don't
Sonia?
care about selling it. I would buy it off you if you
I think
had
there may be a
given me
little domestic going on. And mute.
Go on, right. All right. Where was I?
We got the amber, the red, the amber, the green, and the red, didn't we?
Yeah, no, I was talking about these RICS reports. Yeah, and I was saying that they're fairly expensive. I don't know, they could be £500, £600, £700. But as I was saying, they give you some peace of mind. And also, as you mentioned before, I think they can give you a negotiating tool to go back to the sellers with if they show a significant fault. And if that's the case, then they basically don't cost you anything, and can even save you the cost and more. They're also insurance backed. So if the surveyor makes a mistake that costs you money to put right, you can sue that surveyor for recompense. Mine, as you were saying, Debbie.
You sure?
I'm like on a little game where I'm trying to find the mute. You know, like when you're trying to find the peg for the hole and stick it in or whatever. It's like, right. So sorry. Yeah, that's it.
All right. I was just going to say the information, because if they make a mistake, it could cost them money or their insurance company money anyway. Which is why a lot of the information in the survey will say things like possibly or maybe or further inspection needed or unable to lift carpets or floorboards or unable to look in the loft. Some of the wording can be quite ambiguous just to cover against a misdiagnosis. But having said that, they can be well worth having them done. Certainly on older houses, I would 100% recommend a RIC survey as houses deteriorate as they get older if they're not regularly maintained, which they usually not. But on houses that are 10, 20, 30, even 40 years old, you actually really wouldn't expect a great deal to go wrong with them in that period of time. So it's really up to you as an individual, how experienced you are at recognizing certain defects, as to whether you go ahead with a RIC surveys or possibly a home buyer's report, which Debbie mentioned is another type there. Although I would think Debbie, as a trainer and mentor, would, as she said there, would probably say always get a survey for peace of mind, because we're not in this property game to gamble or take risks. It's just part of the cost. Now, as I said before, these surveys and reports can be quite in depth, perhaps 60, 70, 80 pages long. And they can be a bit overwhelming if you don't understand a lot of the jargon or even some of the wording. So it's quite handy that the defects are prioritized in order of severity or urgency. So you can just scan the document and see the red dots or the number ones, and you can fairly quickly come to a decision as to whether to continue with the purchase or renegotiate or even pull out. Okay. So this is the survey that I want to go through, and it's 59 pages long, okay, and it took me over an hour to read and digest. So I certainly haven't got the time tonight to dissect and scrutinize the report, because every one of the defects listed here, the survey went into detailed explanation along with photos. But this year was his condensed list near the end of the report on what should be done with a priority score of 1 to 3. There's also some costs involved for the works, although this isn't always in the reports. It's sometimes it depends on how much either you're prepared to pay for the survey or the company that carries it out. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to skim over the required repairs on here, and I'll give you a few comments and explanations on each one where I can, and then I'm going to go into a bit more detail on one of them, and that's cavity wall tie failure. And if you've got any queries or questions as I work through the surveyor's recommendations, is there a chat box on here?
Yes, yes. So I can see on the chat box. So get as many questions in there as you can, ladies and gents, and we'll get them answered. Yeah.
Exactly. I'll answer at the end. When I've finished, I'll answer if there's any questions there. I'll answer them as best I can anyway. So reference 1, and that's the first priority one, is to overhaul the main roof covering. The surveyor's taken some pictures where slates are slipping out of place, and this happens when the nails holding the slates in place start rusting and snap. And once this happens, every winter every winter or strong wind, which are becoming more and more common now, will cause other slates to slip out. And as the nails will rust at relatively the same rate, roof repairs will be required almost every year until it comes to a point where it's really not cost effective to paying a roofer every year. And then really the whole roof will need to be replaced. I also think, mind, that his estimates on reference 2 there of £4,000 to £6,000 to replace the roof is probably a bit too low. I could easily add at least a couple of £1,000 onto that, but it just depends on the roof. All roofs are different. And the bottom photo there is just showing some cement which holds the ridge in place that's fallen out, and that can then lead to water getting in there, or the ridge becoming unstable in high winds. Reference 3, it says remove moss growth from the offshot roof. And now moss on a sloping roof will slow the speed of rainwater running off a roof. And if during a downpour there's also a gale blowing, like up the slope against the flow of water, then that water can get pushed back up and under the tiles and into the loft space. Or whatever's underneath there, and cause water ingress and penetrating damp. Although I might add, moss shouldn't be removed like from down below with a high-powered jet wash, okay? Because then water will just get forced under the tiles and into the loft area or whatever room is below there. Excuse me. Reference 4, form projection at bay roof. Any roof covering on a bay window allowing rainwater to run off that roof should have a drip approximately 2 inches, 50 millimeters away from the timber fascia boards there. I don't know if you can see that the scalloped dressed lead on the photo there. It's tight up against the timber fascia there. So rainwater running off the bay and down that fascia is rotting the timber. And water will eventually get underneath and rot the timbers inside. Actually, there's actually damp inside on the ceiling, and that's mentioned in further back in the report. If that lead was 50 millimeters off the timber, then a gutter could be fitted underneath, and that will take rainwater to a downpipe and away from the house. But actually, as it says in reference 5 there, it's actually easier to strip the bay window off, the roof off, and start again. Sometimes it's easier and cheaper to do that. Reference 6, take down and rebuild the left-hand side of the chimney stack. It's actually the right-hand side on this photo, as the picture's been taken from the rear of the house. I don't know if you can see the bowing of the brickwork at the top where I put the arrow. It's suffering from something called sulfate attack, causing it to bow. But that's actually going to take me way too long to explain and talk about tonight. But it's a very slow process that takes many years. And to be honest, I've seen much worse examples, and this one is nowhere near collapse. So I think, in my opinion, a priority 1 or 2 is actually a bit harsh. It's just something that needs to be kept an eye off for the future. That's my opinion. Right, I'm going to get a drink here a second. I'm going to skip through a few here because they're not so important in my opinion anyway. Reference 7, repairs to the rear chimney stack. What it does, it just refers to a bit of pointing that's required to the brickwork of another chimney at the back of the house. Reference 8, installing eave trays. Again, it'll take me way too long to explain tonight, and it's only a priority 3. And actually, we'll rarely, if I get to a priority 1 or a 2, and I'll talk about that another day. Reference 9 shows a poor picture of staining the cast iron gutters. and it just suggests that they may be leaking and should be checked over when it's raining. And at the end of the day, that's something that's easily and cheaply fixed. But it's been given a priority 1 because leaking gutters can cause penetrating damp if they're left for any length of time. So it needs to be looked at, but it's easily something that's easily done. Reference 10, cavity wall tie replacement. Now that's the subject I'm going to come back to shortly, and I'll show you what it is, how to look for it, and how to look for wall tie failure. Reference 11, lime and lime mortar is in itself, it's a massive subject of its own. And I'll be honest, I could stand here and talk about how important it is for the next 2 hours, which I'm obviously not going to do. But the use of lime is a dying art in this country. Builders don't like to use it because it burns the skin. But the lack of its use is causing massive problems with older properties. Lime's been in use in building work for thousands of years. I mean, even the pyramids were built with it. They seem to have survived okay. And houses in this country up to 100 years ago were built with lime mortar in the brickwork, but using modern methods such as cement in old houses is causing them to deteriorate at an alarming speed. Right, I'm gonna stop there before I get me high horse about all that. Okay, as I said, I could talk for hours on the subject, and it's something we can come back to. Reference 12, remove flaunching to base of bay window. You know, you pay a lot of money for a survey, but then the surveyor uses technical jargon which not many people understand, and it really annoys me. Flaunching, it's that strip of angled cement between the path and the bottom of the bricks. Okay, it was used and still is, to be honest. If there's an internal damp issue at ground level, and the builder thinks it may stop penetrating damp, perhaps from standing water on the path there, or water dripping down from the top of the bay window. However, it's totally ineffective. And in fact, it might only act as a barrier from moisture that's in the bottom row of bricks from actually evaporating outwards. It's ineffective. It could be actually trapping moisture in the brickwork. Reference 13, crack stitch repair. Now, this photo isn't very good. It's a bit blurred, but it's in the center of this gable wall here. There appears, from what I can see, it appears to be a thicker grey cement mortar joint in the brickwork. Now, the surveyor says there's a vertical crack there and recommends 1 meter long, 1 meter long metal rods that are fitted horizontally inside the mortar joints with an epoxy resin, and it stitches the brickwork together. But without being there, it's really hard for me to comment on a blurred photo, I'm afraid. But in my experience, a vertical crack in the center of a large brick wall is nearly always an expansion and contraction crack. Due to the wall heating up and expanding in the summer and then cooling down and contracting in the winter, then this is where a vertical crack will appear in the center of a wall. A vertical crack will appear. It's not structural, and it'll happen every year. Metal rods stitching cracks in walls certainly have their place, depending on the reasons for the crack. But again, in my opinion, in this situation, vertical cracks would just appear either side of the metal rods if they're fitted. My preference would be to cut a vertical line through the brickwork and fit something called an expansion joint, allowing the wall to expand and contract. But often, though, defects and recommending repairs are just an opinion, and different surveyors' opinions can differ. And often there's not just one way to fix a defect, there could be several. Also, sometimes it's not obvious why a defect has occurred, and sometimes it does need invasive work to get to the root cause. That's that one anyway. Right. Reference 14, a crack stitch to repair to bedroom. Again, I've only got a blurred picture of a plastered wall, so I can't comment as to why the crack may be there. Reference 15, investigate and underpin if necessary. The surveyor has noticed some movement of the bay window and tapered cracking at the junction of the bay and the main wall of the house. I'm assuming he means that's where I've put the red arrow anyway. Not that I can really make anything out from this photo. So this is where terms like further investigation needed are used to cover against any misdiagnosis. However, in the past, bay windows were often built after the main building was finished and with very little or no foundations. The bricks were just laid on top of the soil or the subsoil, as it was thought that the lesser weight of a bay window didn't actually require foundations. This has since been proved to be not the case, with many bay windows settling or subsiding, or at least moving away from the main house wall. So digging a trial pit to look under brickwork would determine whether there are any whether there's any foundations there.
Ik heb broccoli zo koken. Waar ik nog daar ben, kan ik voor dit koken en weer de pasta met pesto, de pasta met broccoli. Ik heb keine mascarpone, aber...
Donia, can you turn off your... Can you mute yourself, please? I did mute you before. Thank you. Right, sorry about that, Rob.
Thanks, Debbie. What was I saying? Yeah, yeah. You can have a look under the foundations and see if there's any foundations there. I can have a look under the brickwork. If not, underpinning would solve the problem. Underpinning, if you don't understand, is basically, it means putting concrete foundations under the existing brickwork. That's all it is. However, it can sometimes be easier and cheaper to knock the bay down and just rebuild. Reference 16, damp-proofing works to the living room. The surveyor states that there are high damp readings at lower level and suggests that the DPC or the damp course is being breached. However, there aren't any internal or external photos, so I can't comment. However, I have seen on many occasions where penetrating damp or so-called rising damp has been diagnosed, but has actually been condensation caused by living conditions of the householder. So I always take these ones with a bit of caution, if you like. And it's something we can go into in detail another time. Reference 17. Upgrade insulation, it's pretty much self-explanatory. Reference 18, allow for replacing lath and plaster ceilings. If you don't know what a lath and plaster ceiling is, then you probably have seen it, but just didn't know its name. It's when thin strips of wood are nailed to the underside of joists to create a ceiling, or to timber studs to create walls, and then it's plastered over. However, over time, usually many years, the plaster can become detached from the timber lats, just simply due to its own weight, and it can cause the ceiling to bow or even collapse in places. And in the past, to prevent this happening or progressing, should I say, either plywood or fibre boards would be nailed or screwed through to the joists that's over the top of the plaster, like in this photo here, and then small strips of wood would be fitted to hide the joints. It's fairly common in older houses, but these are considered, really now they consider them unsightly, and are usually replaced with plaster boards and skimmed over with plaster. However, just when removing these fibre boards, just be prepared for a partial or a full collapse of the ceiling. Reference 19, remove polystyrene tiles from the ceiling. That's given a priority rating of 1. Now, these tiles became popular in the 1960s. In fact, I can still remember the smell of the glue when my dad fitted these to our house when I was a kid. They used to hide the cracks in the ceilings, and they were the first form of insulation in houses. Well, if anyone has witnessed how these things burn, you would remove them without any prompting from a surveyor. Okay, if you come get them off, they gave off a highly toxic black smoke, and they drip burning plastic. So you'd be lucky to come out unscathed if there was a house fire with these things on. Reference 20, allow for replastering. As with most older housing, just being re-wallpapered every number of years, just expect the plaster on the walls to be marked or scratched or simply fall off in patches. And then if the house needs a rewire and chasing wires into walls, then just re-skimming the walls will just bring it back up into modern standard. And reference 21, the report mentioned broken floorboards where the house has been rewired and boards lifted. There's also mention of springing treads at the bottom of the staircase. So floorboards might have to be lifted to find out what the problem is. However, you don't know until you get there. The springing might well be rotted joists, and then 200 to 400 pounds might be on the low side. Right then, back to reference 10, wall tie failure. And this is the one I want to go through just to get a little bit more depth, if you like, just so I can at least pick on one subject, so I can give you something more to get your teeth into. So wall tie failure, it's something that will affect almost every house built with cavity walls at some stage. And as a general rule of thumb, this is how houses were built around and since the 1920s. Therefore, it's probably 80–90% of the houses that we're buying. Yeah. It's also something that lender surveyors will pick up on, and may affect the ability to get a mortgage on that house. Although most lenders will simply retain some money until the work's been carried out. But if you're buying on a bridge and the lender survey is only near the end of the refurb, and then they come across the problems then, this may affect the ability to get out of the bridge before the end of its term, which could then cost you thousands of pounds in fees or penalties. So it's just quite important that you recognise the signs of cavity wall tie failure, especially if you're buying at auction, where we were talking about last month. These photos from this survey aren't the best example, but the arrows pointing at cracks in the mortar joint, or where the mortar joint has fallen out. That's what we're looking at. But I want to show you of some photos that I took last week when I was surveying a house that's going to auction later on this month in the Northeast. And I'll explain what wall tie failure is, how and why it happens, and how to look for it. So I was going to say, since the 1920s, most houses have been built with cavity walls, which means two skins or leaves of bricks or concrete block, and an inner and an outer skin with a gap or a cavity in between. Yeah, hence the name, a cavity wall. The inner skin is the strength of the house. All the joists, that's the ground floor, the first floor, the ceiling joists, they're all tied into the inner wall. Even the roof sits on the inner wall. The outer skin is just a wraparound. It's basically to stop damp getting into the rooms, and it also acts as an insulator for the house, the same as like in double glazed windows. but the outer leaf has no strength. Okay, it's just a single skin wall that can easily fall over. Therefore, when a house wall is built, the outer skin is tied to the inner skin by strips of metal called wall ties, and they're built into the mortar joints of both the inner and the outer skin. So therefore, it gives the outer wall its strength. That's where the outer wall gets its strength from. However, over time, over many years, especially walls that are subject to driving rain and are often soaked through, this will allow the metal wall ties to rust. And when metal rusts, it expands and it opens up the mortar joint, often to such an extent that the cement mortar either cracks or even falls out. And this is the house I saw last week. This is the one that's going to auction later on this month. So you can see where the cracking is there, and the mortar is actually falling out. And the force created by rusting wall ties expanding can even lift the bricks above, depending on how much weight's on it. In fact, in this photo, you can see how it's lifted the brick above where I put the arrow there, and it's even snapped the windowsill.
Wow.
So that's the force that can be produced. And going back to the original report, the surveyor's actually taken these photos showing how the rusted wall ties have expanded and even pushed a row of bricks out of place. Now, eventually, and I'm talking years here, after rusting metal expands, the next stage is it eventually breaks up and turns to dust. Then the outer skin or the outer leaf isn't tied to the inner leaf anymore. Now it's lost its strength and can easily bow outwards or collapse, especially during gale type conditions. So when you're viewing houses, you're looking for horizontal cracks in the mortar joints or mortar falling out or falling out. And this is a perfect example that I found here, but they aren't usually as obvious as this. Sometimes you really have to study the walls, or look for a different coloured mortar where the owner has pointed up, or filled the joints in with cement sometimes, or has even tried to hide the cracks before putting the house on the market. You don't know. However, it will also be the same that if old rusted wall ties have been removed and new mortar filled in. But in a couple of slides' time, I'll show you how to tell the difference. And I just had to show you this one that I surveyed. It's a good job I had my binoculars with me on this viewing night, or I might have missed it. Although it was fabulous. So I just think the guy must have just done it in the dark. Anyway, as you see on number 10 there, reference number 10, that cavity wall ties can be replaced, yeah. But I also think that the price of £1,000 to £1,500 is very low in my opinion and my experience. Obviously, it depends on how many walls are affected and the size of the house. But then when you also take into consideration the cost of scaffolding as well that you've got to put up, you can easily be talking £2,000, £3,000 or even £4,000 to replace all the wall ties on a decent sized house. The top 3 wall ties on here they're typical of what was used up until about the 1980s. In fact, I used to sell them. I must have sold hundreds of thousands of these. They're called galvanized fishtail wall ties back in the 1970s. Can you see that they're actually in perfect condition on the left-hand side? That's where they were cemented into the inner wall, and all the rust is on the right-hand side, and that's where they were cemented into the mortar joint into the outer leaf, and it's the outer leaf that gets soaked with the rainwater. To replace them, firstly, they're found using a metal detector. And then the rusted half is cut out with an angle grinder. The inner half, to be honest, is just left in place, as there's rarely a problem with rusting on the inner half. Then a hole is drilled through the center of another brick. It's through the center of a brick, and then through to the through half of the inner leaf brick or concrete block, whatever the inner leaf is. It goes halfway through that one as well. Then a replacement wall tie, like these bottom 3 steel rods here, are inserted through. The top replacement tie in this photo here, it's then twisted with a screwdriver, which then expands at both ends, and it ties the bricks together, and then tying the leaves together. The bottom 2 steel rods are inserted along with an epoxy resin, which, when cured, then forms a bond that's actually stronger than the bricks themselves. So this is the house I surveyed last week, but the right-hand photo is a close-up of the right-hand photo of the left-hand photo, if you can get what I mean. That's where the circle is. The right-hand photo refers to that circle, and this circle is on the other half of the semi, and it's actually had its wall ties replaced. Actually, I didn't want to take a full-on photo of next door because there was a guy staring out the window at me. So I had to pretend I was taking photos of the house for sale and just got some of his in. But if you look carefully where the arrows are pointing, you can see dots in the middle of the bricks where the replacement ties have been inserted, and then the holes have been filled in. Because sometimes they're filled in with cement, and they're easy to see, but often the dye has been added to match the color of the bricks. So again, you have to study carefully to tell if a house has had its wall ties replaced. So now you know how to look for wall tie failure, and how to tell if replacements have already been fitted. And that is a very, very brief overview of a surveyor's report and what to look out for. Unfortunately, we can only pick out what's been found on this particular house, and other houses will obviously have other defects. But hopefully it gives you a little insight into lenders or home buyers type reports. So that's me, and if there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer.
Right, that was absolutely fantastic. You can tell Rob is so passionate about wall ties and anything to do with structural defects. But he's very, very knowledgeable. Honestly, like, I don't know anybody who has got like Rob's knowledge on anything to do with property and structure and stuff like that. So that was brilliant. So that's not to put you off property. You can now go to a property and have a look at, you know, are the wall ties looking all right? Maybe speak to the agent and say you don't think they're quite right. Maybe use it as a negotiation tool before you actually pay for a survey. So hopefully you got lots and lots out of that. What I am going to say is if anybody wants to, got any questions, we're running a little bit over. So what we'll do is, I don't know whether you've got an email address, Rob. I know you're semi-retired, or
it's on there now.
Right, great. So just email Rob on that. And what I would say was, on my part, sometimes you get mortgages where they only do a desktop valuation. Ask your broker, is it a desktop or are they physically going to go to the property, because they might not say. If it's a desktop, in my eyes, yes, they're going to lend you the money, but I would always still get a physical viewing of either Rob or a Rick Severe, because they've never been in. So how can they say there's stamp or anything like that? So for the sake of 300 quid, you know, I would do it. So yeah, so a lot of them do the desktops, but then how can they see about the wall ties and roofs and stuff inside?
That's it. They don't know. They just cover themselves.
Yeah, but the still going to lend you 75%. So property is a good bet. Do you know what I mean? So that was really helpful, Rob. Thank you so much. And Rob does all our defects coaching and stuff like that on Debbie Does Properly for the coaching clients. He just absolutely loves it, and it's so useful. So thanks, Rob. That was absolutely brilliant. Can we give Rob a little, do you know when you get your little things on the computer, a little wave? I will just go wave. I don't know where it is on the computer. Excellent. Right. Okay. Thanks, Rob. That was brilliant. And now we've got Lady V up just about the renters reform. So what I'm going to do is
Do you want to stop share here?
yes, please, Rob. Do you need Shirley to do that, or are you all right?
Have I done it?
I don't know. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's brilliant. Thanks, Rob. That was really, really excellent. Lady V, are you still there?
I am, yes, I'm here.
Excellent. Do you want to share your screen?
I would love to. I've never tried this before.
I knew there was something techy going to come up. I just
I'm going
knew.
to press share screen, then I'm going to open the presentation, yeah?
Let's do it.
Give it a go.
Let's make this happen.
Okay, can people see my screen yet?
Put your thumbs up. No.
Yes, okay. Share this one.
Yes, I think that's good. Yes, excellent.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So today we were supposed to find out what was going on. Today was the second reading for the Renters Reform, or Renters' Rights Bill as it's now known. Truth be told, I'm none the wiser. We still haven't really moved forward. I'm guessing we'll get some more clarity in the next couple of days. So I just want to quickly run through basically what we know is happening. So the Renters Reform Bill, as it was by Conservative, was there effectively to level the playing field between landlords and tenants. Everyone was saying that tenants were discrimination, tenants with pets, people with children, tenants on DSS, that kind of thing. So this is basically a summary. We knew it had cross-party support, so a lot of the things that Conservative had already effectively agreed, Labour have kept in there. So the Renters' Rights Bill, as it is now, these are the main points that we're looking at. End of section 21, which is the one that obviously everyone's talking about most. No more fixed term tenancies. So no more fixed terms. Everybody's going to be periodical from day one. Conservative were hoping to bring that in a staged process, but as I understand it, Labour's just going to everyone blanket from day one, no more fixed term tenancies. So everyone will be on a rolling contract. I'm not 100% sure how that brings more security of tenure to tenants, but nonetheless, that's what we're getting. They're going to ban the discrimination and the rental bidding wars that we've been seeing. I don't think that's a bad thing. Extend Awab's law. So Awab Ishak was the little boy who died with the damp and mould in the property down in London mid-COVID. So that's already a law that's in the social housing sector. They're going to bring that into the private rented sector as well for us. Again, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think the majority of landlords are good landlords, and that's not going to affect us because we look after our properties and we look after our tenants anyway. There's going to be a new ombudsman service, similar to property redress scheme, which is there for agents or the property ombudsman. The ombudsman service, so all landlords will be required to register and prove compliance. And what that also means is a digital database. So where we reference tenants effectively will be able to kind of reference us. What do they want us as a landlord? Are we compliant? How many notices have we served? Are we serial notice servers to our tenants? The other thing with that, which I think is a positive, is that if a tenant is a bad tenant, if a tenant has a history of rent arrears and they look at us as a landlord and see that we serve notices, they might just not try it on. They might go, I don't want that landlord. I'm not going to last 5 minutes there. I can't get away with not paying my rent because this landlord knows how to serve a notice. So I don't think that's a bad thing. There's a new possession ground for student HMOs as well coming in. The ones that people don't really like, the one that's really got everyone's goat, I think, is the rent arrears mandatory ground is going to be changed from 2 months to 3 months, and it's going to go from 2 weeks notice to 4 weeks notice. Now, whilst on the surface that doesn't sound horrendous, it's only another month, for us in the Northeast, that's not that bad, but down in London where rents are £2,500 a month, that's pretty horrendous. So that's a worry. And I know NRLA are campaigning to try and get that modified again, but at the moment that this is what it looks like, 3 months with 4 weeks notice. The limit in tenancy rent rises, that's because they're talking about putting rent caps. They discussed it, then they said they weren't going to do it, now they're discussing it again. Effectively, a Section 13 is how we should be raising rent. At the minute we give 1 month's notice, it's looking like it's going to be 2. And it means that we have to follow the process. So it's once every 12 months, fair market rent, with 2 months notice. So again, what I think will happen there is landlords will just factor that into their tenancy. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm a landlord who typically doesn't increase the rent. I'm probably a bad landlord and then I don't increase the rent, but I've got tenants who've been there 5 years and I don't put the rent up. My mortgage hasn't changed in 5 years. I had a 5-year fixed, so I haven't increased it because I have no reason to increase it. I think what's going to happen here is if I'm told that there's a limit and then I'm going to go, okay, well, my mortgage needs to change in 5 years. I'm not going to be able to do an increase to that level in 5 years. So I'll just put a 5% every year. I think that's probably, people will factor that into their tenancy clauses. That's what I think is going to happen. So that might actually be a good thing for us. There's going to be a new selling ground, which there is already. Sorry, there isn't a selling ground. Sorry, there's the move back in one, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the selling ground is one that we knew was going to happen. So that's a really good one because I think a lot of landlords do serve a notice because they want to sell or because they want to move in a family member, move back in there themselves, give it to their son, give it to their daughter maybe. But the selling ground will be with 4 months notice, and you can't serve it in the first year, and you're not allowed to re-let for 12 months. So what it means is you're not going to be able to use it, and you're not going to be able to serve it on that ground unless you're going to use it. So it can't be abused effectively. And there will be penalties if you do use these grounds and don't use them. So it's kind of, yeah, it's trying to encourage landlords to be honest and compliant. I think it's not a get around for the Section 21 is what I'm saying. And introducing the Decent Homes Standard as well, which is all part of the AWAB's law and the generally looking after our tenants. So again, that's something that we've already got in social housing. There will be fines for non-compliance. I'm not entirely sure how we're going to be monitored on that, other than with the Ombudsman service and the database, so proving our compliance, which we do anyway. Gas safety certificates are every year. EICRs are every 5 years. Most landlords know this. Most landlords do it. We'll have to upload those documents, but I'm not sure how they're going to keep track of the other things like the damp and the mould, and unless it just comes through the Ombudsman, we're not 100% sure about that yet. So that's what they're talking about. So Section 21 is going, which I know a lot of people are upset about, but the reality is, why do we use Section 21 anyway? We use it if we're going to sell. We use it if we're going to move back in. We use it for rent arrears, typically. We use it for antisocial behaviour. And we also use it if the tenant needs rehousing by the council. So I've been through this exact process with one of my tenants recently. She was working, she got pregnant, had a baby, couldn't return to work with postnatal depression, so she was suddenly on benefits. She needed the council to move her closer to her mum, and they wouldn't. They wouldn't move her because she was housed. Now, I knew she was going to struggle with her rent, so I had to serve a Section 21, and we went through the process together, and it was all very amicable, but to me, completely unnecessary. If the council had stepped in and helped, she would have been moved a lot sooner. But that's the reality of it. We use the Section 21 99% of the time. Those are the reasons. And all bar the rehousing by the council point is going to be covered on the Section 8. So I think the thing is, don't panic about it. It's not the end of the world. It's not terrible that we're losing it. We're not actually losing our powers to evict a tenant. We're just losing our powers on Section 21, which is something that we've all become very comfortable using, I think. Seen as the easy option, I think. The unintended consequences of getting rid of this is that landlords are going to be more stringent with the referencing. Again, I don't think that's a terrible thing. We've got a lot of tenants out there vying for our properties, so why wouldn't we be stringent about the referencing and pick the right tenants? The requests for guarantors will increase. That might be a problem because a lot of tenants on DSS don't have those guarantors. They don't have somebody in the family who's a homeowner who can stand as a guarantor. Rents will probably rise, as we talked about on the last slide about the Section 13s and implementing an annual rental increase. And I think mediation is going to be needed more than ever, simply because the courts are going to be massively overloaded. So we're going to have to try and work with our tenants to avoid court effectively. So there are a lot of unintended consequences. That element is going to be, you know, sort of suck it and see, and we're just going to have to. We know the courts aren't going to be reformed currently. There isn't going to be a dedicated housing court, which is what we would have liked to have seen. That's not going to happen. Section 21s don't require court. Section 8s do. So I think that's the only real worry that I have is what's going to happen with this huge increase where we can't use Section 21, so we use Section 8. There's going to be double the amount of notices potentially hitting court. So that's a concern for me. This is a massively hefty slide, so I'm not going to talk through it all, but I did just want to show you what they're proposing. So these are the new proposed grounds. So ground 1 already exists. That is currently a ground. However, currently it's what we call a prior notice ground. So we needed to make the tenant aware that we would probably want to move back in, or that we lived there before and might need to move back in, or our family member. So currently we have to have that in there in the agreement as a prior notice ground, otherwise we can't use it. The new proposed ground, still ground 1, they're removing that prior notice, which is actually really helpful because we don't know whether we're going to need to move back in. We don't know if our daughter's going to split up from our boyfriend and need a house in 7 years' time. We don't know. So that's quite handy that they're going to remove that prior notice. 1A, sale of dwelling, that's the one that I think is really helpful because that ground doesn't exist at all yet. So if you want to sell it, you'll be able to issue a notice, as we said before, with 4 months, not in the first 12 months, 4 months notice, and you need to actively prove that you are trying to sell. So have actually engaged an estate agent, probably have it on the market already. If you don't do that and just re-let it, then there's going to be some quite hefty penalties for that. A lot of the other grounds there that I haven't put in bold are relating to sort of social housing. There's a lot of new grounds in there for social housing. Ground 6, redevelopment, that's already a ground. So that's demolish, reconstruct or redevelop the property. 6A, compliant with enforcement action, is a new one. That's to do with if we've been issued a notice, mainly by the council, to do some works, whether that's an improvement order or an environmental health order or rent repayment order. So we need to get the tenant out in order to comply. Death of a tenant, that's already in there. We've got a ground 7, which is where the tenant heir is not named on an AST. So that ground's going to still remain. 7A, severe antisocial behaviour, criminal behaviour. Antisocial behaviour currently is a discretionary ground only. There is going to be a mandatory ground by the looks of it, 7A. However, it does need to be really severe. I'm not just talking about, smoking weed, barking dogs, dog fouling, abusive tenant. I'm talking severe criminal behaviour, police involvement, potentially even, gone to prison. There was a hint of some kind of domestic violence potentially in there. And also that ground 8 as well, which was 2 months, bring up to 3 months rent arrears. So those are the new proposed Section 8 mandatory grounds. Those are the discretionary ones, which, to be perfectly honest, haven't really changed. The only one that's kind of stood out for me is 14ZA. I don't know how to name these, but 14ZA, which is rioting. This is a new one because of all the riots that we've had recently. So if your tenant is convicted of an indictable offence took place in a riot in the UK, that could become a discretionary ground. So that's in there as that's a new one. We don't know what the sort of litmus test will be on that, where the threshold's going to be, but that is a new one. These are the things I wanted to just throw in there as important to remember. A mandatory ground means a judge cannot refuse possession if the ground is proven. Now, I've said proven because factual evidence is key. Anecdotal evidence is useless. So you can't just say, oh, well, the neighbour said he was making a lot of noise last night. We need evidence. So this is where you need to engage potentially other departments, especially I'm talking about antisocial behaviour here. Likewise with rent arrears. If they haven't paid their rent and you go, oh, they haven't paid me rent for 5 months. Well, what's the evidence of that? Oh, well, he just gives me cash and he hasn't given me any cash for 5 months. I do genuinely hear these stories. I'm assuming, you know, everyone that comes to these things generally is a really good landlord. So you sort of feel like you're teaching your grandma to suck eggs. But if it's a tenancy agreement and rent needs to be paid, get it set up on a standing order so it's there, same time, every month, you can see it. If they miss it, make sure you write to them. Don't just ring them, write to them, WhatsApp, text message, email, write to them and say your rent's been missed. You know, and then all this is evidence. Every step of the way, no matter how good your relationship is with your tenant, you need evidence every step of the way. A good relationship can turn into a bad relationship very quickly. And I do see that often with tenants. There will be penalties if grounds are misused. So just make sure that if you serve because you're selling, you are selling. If you serve because you're moving in a family member, you are actually moving in a family member. If it's a bypass of a Section 21, as I say, there will be hefty penalties for that. And not only that, but you potentially will then get highlighted on the database, the digital database, and the next tenant will know that actually, you know, you haven't been particularly honest as a landlord. Maybe you're not the kind of landlord that tenant wants. And we want to attract good tenants, so we need to be good landlords. But there are over 175 rules and regs. Most of us are not property professionals. I think 85% of landlords have between 1 and 3 properties. So just make sure you are educated, you keep up with your CPD training, you keep coming to these networking events because it's invaluable information that you get, and it's always changing, shifting sands constantly in this game. And the days of amateur hobby landlords are over, are stuck in there. I genuinely believe that's true. We are housing providers and we need to be taken seriously and we need to treat it seriously. It's your investment, your customer. If in doubt, use an agent like Debbie. That's me done in a nutshell. That's my information. More than happy to talk to anybody at any time about any of your problem tenants.
Right, take a snapshot of Victoria's details, please, because Victoria deals with all the problems. So I've already put a couple of people to Lady V because you need somebody who specialises and is an expert and knows what to do and where you know to solve your problem, give you that advice that you need. This is a massive part of our power team as landlords and investors. Absolutely huge. So that was absolutely fantastic. And do you know what it is? You squeezed all that in, didn't you?
I raced through that. And do you know what? I'm hoarse. All I've done today is talk to people. So my voice is like squeaky.
That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. So Victoria's part of our power team as well. So just reach out to Lady V. She's part of the Debbie Does on their clinics and obviously, you know, London and everything. So yeah, just get in touch with Victoria. She can help you massively with anything, any challenges. We've got a good team. We've got Lady V with the challenges. We've got Wayne with the finance challenges. We've got Lee with the legal challenges. And we've also now got Bev Tyndale, who's helping me with sales challenges and getting more properties on board because they're so greedy. They want more deals, don't they? So we've got Bev helping out on that. So right, so we've only went 5 minutes over. All of that information's been amazing. Any little quick questions? Great content, amazing network event. Oh, that's great, Ingrid. Thank you. We do these free and, you know, share this if you can because it's all about helping investors and landlords out there who haven't got that power team. You've got this power team, you know, let's share it because we're here to help everybody and you might be able to help somebody as well. So, yeah. Always ask how people are doing. So, Michael Sween said, are they removing ASTs? And if so, what would be replacing them?
So all they're removing is fixed term ASTs. So everybody will just be on a rolling contract from the off. effectively.
Right. So get in touch with Lady V. That was fantastic. Wayne, Lee, have you got anything to add to that?
No,
not really.
fantastic, Ray.
Excellent. It's the first Zoom where they've been really quiet, never said anything. I think we're quite like it, don't we, Gan?
There's one question on here, Debbie. Can I just quickly answer? Because
You
I've just
can, right, darling, yes.
But Victoria Campbell said, at what point do guarantors get called on if a tenant is in arrears? It's
Mhm.
really important, if you've got a guarantor, that you contact them as soon as a tenant falls into arrears, because effectively that guarantor will be held accountable as accountable as your tenant. So, you know, if you're going to go to court and get potentially a CCJ or freeze assets or, you know, get a bankruptcy or winding up order, you can do all of that against your guarantor, and that's not fair if they haven't had the opportunity to fix the problem. So right from the off, contact the guarantor and say, you know, your tenants missed the rent. They've had two polite reminders. Could you possibly have a word with them? And what you tend to find is the guarantor will give them a kick for you anyway, because they don't want that hanging over them. So yeah, it's really important to involve the guarantor in the process.
So you don't have to wait for when you have to evict them or anything like that. It's like literally.
I would do it as soon as the first rent is missed.
Yeah, and that I've actually done that in the past. I've only had one actually, and we said it's a serious contract that you've signed. Basically, you will be getting a CCJ. We are going to go forward with this, and guess what? They paid the rent. Hallelujah! So it's good to have guarantors. Just a couple of events. So if anybody's in London, we're in London next Tuesday, which is the 15th. Then we've got great speaker. We've got the lovely Tina Walsh, all things property sourcing, property compliance, all of that. Literally, she scares the shit out of her, but we'll have to go by the rules. So she's great. She keeps her right. And if you're even using property sources, it's what to look out for as well. So if you're using property sources to ramp up your investment properties, there's nothing wrong with that. But just make sure that you work with the right team, the right people, and that they know what they're doing. Also, next Monday, we've got the Sunderland, we've got the Debbie Does Sunderland, and we've got something fantastic. We did auctions. Remember we done them on last month's Zoom? We did them in London, but this was live in the room. So we had Lee was amazing going through all the auction packs, doing getting into groups, having to identify, what was wrong with the property, what was missing in the auction legal pack. It was fantastic. So we're going to do that in Sunderland on Monday. So I'm making them work really hard, and Wayne's going to be there, having a chat about what sort of finance and how that works on the different auction types. So there's going to be loads of information there on Monday. So that's that. And on the 17th, I know there's a lot of dates where you'll get an email. I'm going to do a dealio or no dealio. So it's really to help people who need to ramp up the portfolio quickly, and just to help identify a deal very, very quickly for your strategy within your area. A lot of other stuff in there as well. So that's on the 17th. And I promise by the end of it, you will learn loads, and this will really speed up the process on your buying your investments and your strategy. So you'll get like a cookie cutter and be like boom, 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 because time's money, it's energy, it's time away from your family. Let's just get shit done very, very quickly. And I think that's it. Anything else for anybody else to say? Have you had a good time, gang? Woo! Yeah! It's been brilliant, hasn't it? So don't forget to like and share, and anybody in Victoria, you've got Lee, you've got Wayne, stick something on social media, because everybody gives their time free, and we just really want to make sure that we're doing a good job. I can't reveal who's on next month. It's a top secret. You obviously know that means I haven't got anybody lined up yet, but they will be really, really good. Okay, my lovelies, it's good night from him, it's good night from me, it's good night from him, her, and everybody else. Thank you for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you next month. Bye.
Night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.